Service innovation, again, it's about how do we deliver the service differently. I worked in in a pharmaceutical company, and we had a product that wasn't selling well. And as I started doing my research, going out to our customers, going out to clinics and hospitals, talking to patients, I realized, the reason it wasn't selling well is, one, it was very unaffordable and expensive for patients because they had to pay out of pocket. And two, they were very sick patients, cystic fibrosis patients, and they had to go see physicians so many times a year that going for another medication pickup was a little bit too much for a lot of these patients. So they sometimes would just avoid and not even take that particular medication. So we had to go about how do we deliver that particular product differently. And the solution that at the time, that I worked on with the team was we created an online pharmacy contract and partnership, and we not only reduced the cost of medication for patients, but we made it extremely convenient for them to go online with a prescription they had, order their medication, and it would come right to their home. And then we've got, so those are business model innovations, AirBnB. They're really changed about how we go about, traveling. Most of us don't want to stay in fancy Marriott hotels anymore when we can have a nice apartment or a condo that we can get from somebody through Airbnb in another country, right? So it's just a different way of innovating. So those are the three different, I think, key categories in the innovation that I've selected, which is everything you guys have discussed, which is you've got the incremental innovation, which is not necessarily making a major change, but taking existing product or service and making some improvements to it or adding additional service to that offering. So that kind of heads into the incremental. Breakthrough is very different. Breakthrough is something that will actually change. It comes from your internal needs of organization. Let's say that they need a new technology. And then disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is probably the most, complex way of innovating because what happens is you disrupt the whole industry. You change the way people buy this particular product. It doesn't have to be a major innovation where it takes 14 years to develop a new drug and bring to the market. It could be smaller, much more incremental things, such as instead of making a patient take 3 doses of this medication a day, we were able to formulate it into 1 a day. So you've created a lot more convenience for your patient. Or we've discovered that this particular medication is good not only for what we thought it was good for, but it also cures another type of condition that patients have. So those are incremental ways of innovating. You can think in your own world what those could be. Again, the incremental ways of, these companies slowly but surely changing the way their products are, like Coca-Cola and around the convenience of those, how these bottles are and how they preserve the Coca-Cola, I guess, or things like that. And Gillette, in terms of how they have few blades now. It started only with 1 and so on, and of cars, of course. Breakthrough innovation, again, as we were saying, innovation, it's more about relating to how you improve the way you go about doing things, right, in your industry or in your particular company. EMR, which is now used majority of hospitals and clinics, has changed the way, physicians interact with patients. They now have access to, before you even get to see the patient, they can access your records, they can see the history of your disease and any other tests that you've had over the last year, for instance, right? So now EMR has become something that physicians use and create patient portals where they can interact with the patients through this patient portal and answer questions, or they can have patients book and reserve their own appointments to see physicians. So it's a major breakthrough which is developing further and further about how the medicine and how healthcare will be delivered. Disruptive, as we discussed, Blockbuster versus Netflix completely changed the way this industry works, right? And that kills the competitor in the industry. That's what disruptive is. Amazon, it's interesting what's happening with Amazon. How is it going to impact retail space, right? They've started with selling books online. Look at everything under the sun that they're selling right now. You know, what's interesting, I've been reading about innovations, and they say in a top 500 Fortune companies, more than 50% of innovations are business model innovations. So these are companies like Amazon, Starbucks, Airbnb, Netflix. So these have reshaped the way they deliver the products and services. They haven't really innovated in a sense, coming up with a breakthrough product, right, or a service. It's a business model shifting. Again, these examples, you know, Uber, right? Who would have thought that we wouldn't be taking taxis? And this is what innovation is. You have to actually try it. You know, without trying it, it's not an innovation when it's in a conceptual way of saying, oh, this is what we can do, you know, and put it together. The jobs are being shifted to other types of labor skills, right? We see that in every industry. I mean, again, I go back to healthcare because that's where I've been stuck for 12 years. But the physicians in the future, there will be areas where physicians are not going to be needed, right? The machine reading, radiologists, for instance, the machine will be able to read and give you the analysis of your results. So these nice, fancy, highly paid jobs. AI, that's right. The AI will take over a lot of our skills, right? So anyways, that's for another topic.